Hello and welcome to another GM Tips. GM Rick here, and today's topic is going to be an urban setting. So urban settings, a lot of people like cities. I love cities, especially big cities. So cities like Waterdeep, cities like Metropolis, cities like Gotham, cities like what's the major big city with Isaac Asimov's The Empire, talking about the rise and the fall of the empires. So there's a lot of different cities. Well, the big city for Star Wars, where it's the capital city of all the empire. Cities are fun places. Again, you can do a lot with a city campaign. There's just so much intrigue, and it's such a different element than going out into the wilderness or being in a small town. A city campaign offers you a lot of flavors. So when you pick a city to base your characters in, a metropolis is a lot of fun. And I would always recommend a metropolis, or at least a very large city. Why is that? You want lots of quarters where your players can go and do things and learn about. It's almost like going to different countries. A city campaign has the flavors of how do you do street chases? How do you get away from situations? You can use the sewers, you can use the tunnels, you can use other things. What's in the sewers, what lies below the city. There's so much fun you can have with a city campaign. So keep in mind, when you design a city campaign, what you want to do is make it so enticing that your players never want to leave. They want to stay there. And it becomes literally their base of operation as well as their base of adventure. So what kind of draws and ideas can you bring into designing a city campaign? Well, it depends on your system. It depends on what genre you're trying to do. Your city campaign can be simply that the party's part of a city militia, or a city guard, or constabulary, or hero group, or anti-hero group. They can be part of a thieves guild, or a criminal empire. They can be part of a black marketeering group. They can be the foot soldiers of something like the Hand that goes in and tries to take over the city for the better good of the world and their mindset, which could be evil, like the Hand. Or it could be something like Guardians of the Galaxy, where they're coming in and guarding that city as the city's kind of anti-heroes. They could be trying to set up business or trade. They could be trying to do a craftsman's guild or adventurer's guild. Maybe they're vampire hunters, maybe they're werewolf hunters or ghost hunters or other types of supernatural hunters, an occult society. There's a lot of ideas that you can do with this. And I think GMs, as you take the time to run a city campaign, and I emphasize this time and again, get your players' opinions on what they would like to see in a city adventure. What would they be like to be? I mean, what kind of group would they want to be? How would they come together? How would they know each other? Maybe they're childhood friends. Maybe they're street urchins who grew up together on the street. Maybe they're from the same orphanage. They could be from the same guild. They can be people who ran into each other maybe on a mission and saved another group and came together after that. Maybe they're on a quest together to kind of find the same item that's buried somewhere deep within the city or some hidden knowledge. Maybe they're out to stop the rise of some sort of supernatural event from occurring. There's a lot of ideas you can really work with that. So you really want to come up with some ideas of what draws the characters into that city and makes them want to stay there. Maybe it's a post-Holocaust nuclear Holocaust, and that city is it. Maybe it's an undead taking over the world, and so that city is their last bastion of defense. And so they have to keep the invaders out. There's a lot of different ideas you can flavor and do with this. But as you make your city, make sure, number one, you make memorable locations. You have to have a memorable base of operation for your players. A memorable place the players can go to socialize and get to learn about things. a memorable place where they can do business with and get items that they need very, very much, whether it's a black market item or something that they can get on the regular markets. You want to give them that ability to do that and have that ability to go get those items. Maybe it's a healing thing or a hospital that they can go to when they get wounded. Maybe it's a law enforcement area that they can go to get help when things spin out of control, or try to gain information about so they can avoid. There's a lot of different elements that you can bring together. So one of the things you really want to do is design memorable places that the players can go in order to accomplish the things they're trying to accomplish in their campaigns. Make the NPCs memorable and recurring. Really bring them to life. You're almost like a character in the party when you bring those things in, because these are people that they're running into every day. So like Perry White was, or Lois Lane, or some of these others that were in there for these memorable heroes. It could be a port authority for a spaceport, where they're coming in and that port person is who they go to as a buddy to sit and have a drink with and figure out what's going on from time to time. Maybe it's a Thieves Guild member or a syndicate member, a low-level syndicate member that, yeah, they're aligned to the syndicate, but they like the characters, so they're going to share some information now and then. Maybe it's a merchant or a smith or someone along that line, or it could be maybe this cult that is about bringing treasure hunters. So if you're in Numenera, it could be a cult of information, like a library where you go to bring your trinkets in and your other items that are tech that you want to sit and understand and try to get a better understanding of. There's a lot of different ways you can take this, but memorable NPCs and memorable locations are always key for the city campaign. And where are they going to adventure? You've got to design places they can go. Is it the sewers? Is it a hidden raceway? Is it an underground city underneath that's above the big city? Is it a forgotten tomb-layer thing that's underneath there? Maybe it's the Underdark coming up and having a part in the city. There's so many different elements you can do with this. Maybe it's a hidden undead or vampire group that's there. So there's a lot of different elements you can bring together in order to design a city campaign. And keep that in mind. So you want to design these little adventuring places for the players. Whether you're using a module, whether you are incorporating a module, or whether you're doing your own. You want to bring it all together, especially in a big city like that. There's a lot to do. And there's going to be a lot going on. It's a metropolis, heaven's sake. It could be a hackers group. It could be an anonymous, anarchistic hacker group that you're trying to take care of. Or it could be a nasty den of thieves that you're trying to deal with. Or maybe it's a den of vampires that is taken over with their Nosferatu cult, trying to bring in new members. A shadow guild, a shadow thief guild, maybe an incursion from some other realm or plane. There's so much you can do with the city adventure-wise, and you can just keep the players there and keep them going and going and going and building on that city. That's the wonderful thing about that, is that they don't ever have to go outside of it. Now, you can put things outside of it if you want, but put them in the near vicinity of the city so that the players aren't going far from the base of operations and the base of everyday life. Give them jobs and tasks that can earn money in the city that are part of the adventure. You know, whether it's a courier service or doing maybe a arms for hire or group for hire type of thing, bodyguard work. There's so much you can do with this. Maybe it's military service. There's a lot of things you can bring together to really give them that tying element of this is where I make my money, my livelihood, where I adventure, where I come to for fun and drinks and eating. This is my home. And give the story an interesting backstory that the players get to know. They may not know everything about their city. Maybe there's things they're going to learn. Maybe there's hidden things that they didn't know about it, or twists and turns. There's so much you can do with that that really brings that city to life and really gives it that feel of, yes, purpose, and I'm here, and It's thriving and alive and growing, and there's so much mystery to it and mystique. Vivid descriptions. Give vivid descriptions of the buildings and the streets. Keep notes for yourself on these areas so that as your players come in, you keep playing up the importance and the uniqueness of it. I love the shadier elements in the city. So your poor parts of the city, your wharf districts, your spaceports, your maybe it's where all the foreigners come into that city to blend in. You want to have the Hell's Kitchens of your area in your city so your players can be a part of that. And it gives it that much more dimension. Have defined districts in the city. Where are the rich? Where are the poor? Where are the industrious? Where are the non-industrious? Where are the dregs? Where are the criminal elements? Where are all these things? Lay it out in such a way that makes sense. That you have districts of the city that people can go into that have their own unique elements to it. A Chinatown, a Japantown, a little Tokyo, a little Asia, a little Philippines, a little, little Mexico. You want to have these areas in there that give it that unique and distinct cultural flavor as well. So these are some elements, and I think it's very important to keep those elements in mind and go from there. So then, how do you write a campaign around it? Well, you got to look at what makes sense for your players, what interests them. Use their backstories a lot, especially in a city. If they grew up in that city, the backstories blend in much better than when they're adventuring off somewhere that's foreign or totally different to them. Really make it and bring it to life. It could be an Istanbul or Constantinople, whichever one you want to call it, where it's just the jewel of trade on Pathfinder Galarian, like a Katapesh city, or an Absalom, or a Waterdeep, or a, I'm trying to think of the one on Eberron. I should remember that. Free City of Greyhawk for Greyhawk. There's so many places that just beckon as a place to grow up in and have culture with and really work with. There's so much you can do with it and bring those elements in. Pick your music, pick your background sounds to really match where they are. Bring it to life in such a way that you can have different music playing and flavors for the parts of the city that really just awaken the party's senses and get them engaged. So what kind of plots? You could have maybe a high-level murder of an official that happened, or a takeover of a business that was a hostile takeover, or you could have a criminal element that's moved into that part of the city to try to stake their claim and rise up. Maybe it's a vampire that came in there and decided this is going to be where I make my mark and I really live it up. Because there's so many cattle here that I can work with. Maybe it's a werewolf group that's coming in to purge the vampires, kind of like Underworld, where they go into that city and try to get rid of them. Maybe it's a were-rat guild that are trying to deal with other wares and other creatures and gain notoriety. Maybe it's an assassins group that's going through the city and causing chaos by taking contracts and killing people of note. It could be a villain group that comes in and is trying to hide and blend in, but they've got this overall purpose of taking over the city. Maybe it is some sort of a criminal lord that has grown their businesses and corporations under a good corporate guise, but now is doing a lot of dirty work and laundering of money. There's so much you can do with these elements and different things. And that's why I love a city, because a city, you don't have to worry about knowing each new change of scenery in each place you go. You are focused on growing that city into an iconic city that your characters are going to remember and your players. Informants. Who are the informants for the group? Are they building that element? Are they using skills to build that type of diplomacy that is going on, that dialogue, to have those little eyes and ears around the city for you, that's alerting you when things aren't going right, or giving you information that you wouldn't already know? You have to have that web and network there for those players to work with. And so developing those type of NPCs for the characters and those points of where they can go to get that information. Is it a bartender? I love the Harry Dresden books because they always have Mac. And Mac had his place that Harry would go to drink. And it was a place of neutrality that even the evils, the goods, and everybody else could go in and drink. But they had to keep the peace. Mac would not put up with a breaking of the treaty. And he had set up a treaty between all the supernatural elements where you do not hurt each other in my bar. It is bad for business. And everybody feared Mac. They didn't know what Mac was. Mac was one of those entities. So you could have that entity running that bar. It could be a fallen angel. It could be whatever. But that entity sits there and says, you can come in here and gather knowledge. You can BS. You can make contracts. But do not cause trouble in my bar. Do not disrupt what is business for me. Otherwise, you're in deep crap. You remember in Constantine, they had that kind of bar where the guy would help Constantine. He was kind of one of those shady figures. But it was a place you could go, and you knew you could go and get information, but you were safe. Maybe it was, chewing on the ear of the bartender, and they listened to you and just kind of give you little helpful suggestions here or there, or just grunt like Mac did. So, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can even have Fey elements in those cities. The thing I love about the Dresden Files is that Chicago was a hotbed of supernatural activity. So everybody was there. The Fey was there. The Fomorians were there. The dead gods were there. Your criminal elements were there. Your vampires were there. Your ghosts were there. Your other supernatural entities were there. It's all based in that area. So it kept Harry mostly to Chicago 9 times out of 10. He went other places, but Chicago was home base. And Chicago was where most of this craziness ended up happening. So Harry was the guardian of that area. Keep that in mind. You can do a lot with all kinds of different campaigns in one city. And so as you do this, these are the kind of things you want to take into mind. What's the code of conduct in that city? Is it a certain type of city? Is it more of a industrial city? Is it more of an entertainment city like Vegas? What kind of city is it? And why is it existent? And how is it built? I love that the free city of Zobek in Midgard is used as, it used to be where all the Dark Fae practiced. And even one of the former city kings of Zobek basically was in league with the Dark Fae until he was overthrown by the people, became more of a city council government. But there's always that element that wants it to go back to what it was, the good old days, or the good old bad days. So a lot of rich history to that city. There's so many different cities you can pick, and that's the cool thing about it as you look at your campaign. You don't have to always design your own. You can take an existing city and modify it. Or you can make your own memorable city or version of a city and do it the way you feel best. The great part about city-urban campaigns is an actual chase in the city. And I love that Pathfinder has chase cards and other types of cards that you can use. So you have your difficulty class rolls. And I would use this no matter the system. I mean, whether it's Numenera, whether it's Cypher system, whether it's Fate, whether it's Savage Worlds, whether it's D20 Modern, D20 Future, D20 Past, Steampunk, Pathfinder, and whatever else. Hi, Bug. I would use the chase scenes. You want to put out these cards. And what I suggest is making cards with different elements of the chase. You got to jump a fence. You got to climb a wall. You got to climb a building. You got to run through a brothel. You got to do these different things. You got to run through a parade. And you have all these DCs for chases. A failed DC means that the person you're chasing or the thing you're chasing gets ahead of you, or vice versa. You're a good save for you, and you're running away means you get away from the constabulary. But you can do all these chase scenes and award experience and other growth for it. And it's so cool that you don't get to do in other places, because outdoors, yeah, okay, getting away much easier. In a city, not so much. It's tough to do. I remember the World War Z chase scene where the zombies are chasing the Israelis through Tel Aviv, and they're running at full speed, and just the crazy insanity of it all. And imagine what the challenges would be to do that. So, again, welcome to a city campaign. There is so much you can do, and so many different things you can work with it. And it's a neat change of pace, especially if you're experiencing some burnout and need some real revamping of a pace. This is a great place to start, because the ideas that what you can do in a city are much more rich than sometimes what you can do in the countryside and in other areas, where it's focused much more on go finding a certain place. In a city, you've got tons of those places that you can take them. All right, thanks again, folks, for watching my GM tips. I hope this is really helpful. Rick, I'm the GM here, and I hope you have a great week of gaming.